Today we're going to talk about how to pitch a story. I've pitched a lot of stories in my time as an author, and honestly, it's never gone very well for me. So I am not an expert. The problem is most writers are quite introverted people. We're good at sitting in our homes by ourselves with our computers and spinning stories and having a great time at it. What's hard for us sometimes is standing in front of a person and sharing that story with our words, with our voice. In my opinion, there are 3 ways you could go about this. First, it's often good to start with your assets if you have them. Not everybody has them, and that's okay. But, for example, the first time I pitched something in person after I had been published, so I had pitched before, but this was post-published. I had 2 books out and a 3rd on the way, and my first book had just won a major award. But I went up and I did my pitch the way I thought I should, and didn't even mention that I was a published author. At some point, the gal interrupted me as I was rambling on about my story and said, so are you published? And I said, oh, and I pulled my little cover out and slid it across the table. And I said, this just won a Christy Award. And she said, you should have started with that. And I told my agent, and she said I was never allowed to pitch again. But that's an asset. I had an asset. I had just won a major award in the publishing industry, and I should have started with that. I'm the author of By Darkness Hid, and it just won a Christy Award in the visionary category. That would have been a great way to start. So if you don't have a major asset, that's okay. The second way you can pitch your stories to start with your log line, or your what if question, or even a tagline works. Something short and sweet to hook your listener and get them interested. You could use a high concept phrase like Die Hard on a bus or a ditzy blonde goes to Harvard Law School. You could use a log line. An ugly duckling FBI agent goes undercover to catch a killer at the Miss America pageant. You could ask a question. What if Peter Pan grew up? Or, my book poses the question, are angels real? You could use the blank meets blank. It's Gilmore Girls meets James Bond. Or, it's cowboys and aliens. You could set up the teaser. In a world where women no longer give birth, one woman becomes pregnant. Not all taglines work as pitches, but they can pique the listener's interest. The ones I used in last time's episode about Gilmore Girls, Life Short, Talk Fast, that's not a good one. It doesn't really hook anyone into a concept of a story. But try this one. From the movie Inception, the dream is the scene of the crime. See how that one's more intriguing? It gives an idea of a concept, and then the agent or editor would likely ask for more information, and you would keep going. And there's a 3rd way to do a pitch. This is a lesson I learned the hard way from when I tried to pitch the book Replication and failed miserably. After that experience, I went home and I made a YouTube video called What I Should Have Done. And you can watch that video. I'll put the link in the notes below. But I made a video on what I should have done. And I started by telling the story of how I came up with the idea. Screenwriting teacher and consultant Michael Haig from StoryMastery.com also advises the same method for pitching your story, to start explaining either how you came up with the idea or what inspired the idea. Something from your childhood, something from your marriage. So telling a story, especially if it's one that really happened, is a lot easier than trying to recite something you've memorized. The point is to start a conversation in which you come off as someone who has an amazing story to tell. So practice, see what works best for you, find a way to make it into a conversation more than just someone reciting something they'd memorized. You'll be a lot more memorable that way. It'll come off a lot more naturally that way. You'll be a lot less stressed that way. And you'll avoid epic fails like I did with my book Replication, which I still managed to sell, by the way, but not due to any brilliance on my part. My agent did it. Woohoo! Thanks, Amanda.